to provide observations, to provide feedback, to give us more information to let us know what we've actually done, which will then allow us, through reflection, etc., to gain more information to move up to another level of competency.
Thank you. Our next question is from Colombia. It's from Medellín. It is from the Federación Nacional de Comerciantes in Medellín, Colombia.
Muchas gracias. Buenos días.
Thank you. Good morning. From FENALCO, Antioquia, and we have a diplomado on globalization and competitiveness, and the University of Medellín, Antioquia, and the regional TV channel from Antioquia. We are here with presenting this question. What are the main features that we need to take into account in order to develop the visioning and thinking, perspective thinking in the developing countries in facing this new millennium? Thank you.
Well, I would suggest there are quite a few challenges with the millennium that's coming up as we move from a society which has access to huge amounts of information and data, as that information and data is mostly just data and not information, so being able to translate it into something that's of value to us. So I think that's important. But as we think about the future in any organization or any country, with that, whatever the challenge is, I think we go back to an earlier question, that we ought to have a clear idea of where we want to go, what we're trying to accomplish, to bring stability, as Dr. Frantz suggested, to the process, to be able to articulate for the people that are surrounding us so that they can support and share in that vision, because without having a shared vision, you will never get the energy that you need from the resource that you have to actualize your vision. And so you really want to have those conversations. I think also you need to be able to have conversation in ways that will allow you to make new discoveries of things that are already in existence, new ways of looking at the current so that it creates opportunity for the future.
Thank you. Our next call is from Mexico. It is from Baja California. It's the Cervecería Cuauhtémoc Moctezuma S.A.D.C.V. in the city of Tecate, in the state of Baja California, Mexico.
In the process of constructing or building a vision, who should participate, and how do you actually perfect and finish this visioning process?
I'm not sure the visioning process is ever perfect, but it is an image of where we're trying to go. It is something that draws us toward it. One of the characteristics of a vision is that we actually don't know how to get from here to there, and we're making discoveries along the way. One of the things that if we start making connections, it's no longer a vision, it's a strategy, so we need to move further out. So there's always some disconnect in that sense. I also believe that visions can come from anywhere in the organization. They can come from the top, where we tend to believe most of them come from. But in many companies, the vision has actually originated from down within the organization. And so I think that the creation of vision can be anyone's job, ought to be involve many people, and in the conversation. But sooner or later, someone in leadership has to take a stand and say, this is what it is, and here's where we're going. I guess I also would have a bias that I wouldn't spend all my time visioning, that I would create a vision and move toward it and refine it as you go, as opposed to taking a great deal of time to say, I've got the perfect vision, except now I can't get there because I don't have any resources in my organization to affect it. So.
Thank you. Our next call is from Panama. It is from La Universidad Tecnológica de Panamá in the city of Panama.
Good morning, Mr. Hoffman. A big greeting to you. Could we have a learning through visual images or sensory experiences in which a new communication field is applied?
I'm not sure that I totally understand the question, but I guess what I would say is that in the process of visioning, and as I talked about it from today's video teleconference versus some of the previous conferences, is that if we tend to look to ourselves and actually create the space for intuition that Dr. Frantz will talk about, to provide information and insights, it will allow us to bring to fruition or reality those ideas. And so I would say that the process of visioning is one that can take time, but it's also one which I think that we have to trust our best sense of the unknown, because it is something that is unknown and we don't know how we're going to get there at this point in time. But we also have a very clear idea of what it is. And so I would say the visual part is very important, because you want to create something that seems to be tangible for the people around you to be able to grasp. And so it's important to put as much detail on the vision as you can as you are talking about it. And then I think another part of it is, as you are articulating it to the folks, it's really something that energizes them and gets them involved. And so you want to use colorful language which will draw them in and bring them to support you in that process. So it becomes much more of a shared vision than an individual.
Yes, and also, it's really known that much human communication is actually nonverbal. So in terms of new forms of communication, it's actually not new, but we're finding out just that most communication is nonverbal. And I think that the more people in an organization feel free to express themselves, the more that the kind of tacit or unspoken knowledge that people have will be allowed to be expressed, and the more that what already exists, the unspoken communication, will become more spoken. And so the vision can be a lot more representative of every point of view. And if you learn to listen carefully to what people are saying, listen for what they're committed to, then you will see that every person in an organization really has something valuable to add to the vision.
Thank you. We're going to try to get in one last quick question, so we have to make these answers a little bit short. It's going to be from Mexico. It is from La Dirección de Centros de Capacitación para el Trabajo Industrial en México.
Bueno, me comunico de la Universidad de Monterrey.
I am a greeting from the University of Monterrey, Mexico. And my question is, what are the most frequently encountered resistances amongst the executives who live these situations, which are not very typical, or perhaps typical?
Okay, so I'm going to make the assumption the situations are referring to visions. One of the things that executives are challenged with, of course, is that they're running the business on a day-to-day fashion. And so there's lots of issues that need to be resolved rather quickly. So sometimes you get resistance that says, we don't have time for this. However, if you're able to create, again, I'll use the word context, but create the context that suggests that if the business is going to move forward, it has to have a vision or destination. And I probably shouldn't use those two words together. You need a vision which continues to grow and move forward, which continues to draw the business. Without that focus, you will actually lose a lot of resource and a lot of money. And so I would say that putting it in that context of understanding the financials, many of the executives will quickly follow that and come to the conclusion that they need to be very clear of what they're trying to accomplish.
Thank you. Let us begin with Module 2, in which Dr. Roger Frantz will explore the role of intuition in the creation of vision and business success.
Thank you. In the distant past, economic activity was highly dependent upon human muscle. Perhaps 300 years ago, economic activity became more dependent upon machines than human muscle. Recently, perhaps the past 50 years, economic activity is most dependent upon information. With it, sources of information, insight, and vision are also highly important. In addition, economic and social systems are undergoing enormous change. With it, there has arisen a need to sort out the direction and meaning of these changes and one's place within these changes. The facts are these. 1. Most information, insight, and vision are not known to us through logic. Rather, they are known intuitively. Second, every person carries within them an intuitive source of useful information and the intuitive ability for a much greater amount of insight and vision than we've previously believed. What is intuition? It is often defined as knowing without knowing how you know. Other descriptions and metaphors include gut feeling, educated hunch, sixth sense, the eureka or aha experience, subconscious thinking, common sense, and knowing without the process of conscious reasoning. The common element in all these descriptions is that intuition is a non-analytical, that is, it's a non-logical, sequential, step-by-step, reasoned, and conscious process of decision-making. In order to understand intuition, it helps to know what type of thinking is not intuitive. Analytical thinking is not intuitive. There are 4 major differences between these two styles. These differences involve the use of feeling, personal effort used when thinking, the use of logic, and the ability to verbalize how you arrived at your conclusions. First, analytical thinking does not depend upon hunches or feelings. Second, analytical thinking requires the conscious effort of the thinker. Third, analytical thinking requires that the thinker proceed consciously through a logical series of steps. And fourth, analytical thinking uses steps which can be verbalized to another person so that another person can perform the same experiment you did and arrive at the same results. By contrast, intuitions arise as the result of a non-observable internal process. The steps that are taken to arrive at an intuition are not known, so they can't be verbalized to another person. How do you know what your intuition is telling you? I don't know how I know is a common response to this question. Intuitive thinking is thus effortless because intuitions flow into your conscious mind. Intuitions do not involve choosing, arranging, organizing, or manipulating facts with the intention of arriving at a conclusion which logically flows from the data. Intuitions are feelings which are amorphous, fleeting, and almost imperceptible. They may be experienced as hunches, bodily sensations, and sudden realizations. The resulting intuition is rational, but not through analytical thinking. There are 3 different aspects of intuition. The first aspect of intuition is when the mind immediately perceives something so obvious or self-evident that it doesn't seem to warrant explaining or justification. The quote, "We hold these truths to be self-evident," is a famous example taken from American history. Reasoning, on the other hand, takes time and conscious effort, and hence has been referred to as indirect intuition. In a sense, this means that intuition is rapid reasoning and certainly complementary with reason. The second aspect of intuition is a pre-analytic vision. The vision supplies the raw material for the analytic effort. How do we acquire our vision? The great economist Joseph Schumpeter says that we acquire it, quote, intuitively. This should be obvious, unquote. Phil Lipitz, a molecular biologist and venture capitalist, had a vision about how the DNA is related to cancer and aging. It was an intuition which was later verified in a laboratory. The third aspect of intuition is subconscious thinking and expert decision making. In both cases, the individual can give neither an account of the process of decision making nor how they judge it to be correct. The play of chess grandmasters is an example. Grandmasters report that chess is an intuitive activity in which they apply their professional judgment to a game at hand. Even under tournament conditions, grandmasters are said to usually decide on the best move in a matter of seconds, spending most of their time trying to verify their intuition. This is true of decision-making among a wide range of professionals. This third aspect means that intuition is the result of unconscious and rapid pattern recognition, or identifying the key features of the environment. While intuition is the result of pattern recognition, drawing conscious inferences of these patterns is the result of analytical skills. Thus, intuition and reason are complementary components of effective decision-making systems. Let's look now at the use of intuition in our organizations. A recent book titled Intuition, The New Frontier in Management, reported the results of a survey on the beliefs and uses of intuition amongst 1,312 managers in 9 countries, including Brazil. Male managers constituted 87.2% of the survey. Of the 1,312 managers, 71.6% believe that intuition is relevant to research and development. Among U.S. managers, the figure is 83.1%. For the entire sample, only the figures for corporate strategy and planning, marketing, and human resource development exceed the figures for research and development. For the entire sample, almost 80% of managers admit to using intuition and believe that it contributes to corporate success. The managers in the survey listed several definitions or descriptions of intuition. The most common definitions given were non-logical thinking, decisions made without reason and based on few clues or data points, a feeling from within, subconscious analysis based on information stored in memory, a gut feeling, a sixth sense, and spontaneous knowing. Almost 60% of the managers believe that intuition can be enhanced. The remaining 40% are not correct. In the United States, the percentage believing that intuition can be enhanced exceeds 70%. The use of intuition in business is not new, and examples abound. Here, I want to provide you with a few. The cover of the January 13th issue of Forbes magazine read, Company of the Year, Chrysler, smart, disciplined, intuitive. Vice President Bob Lutz's role in pushing the use of intuition at Chrysler is expressed in his statement, quote, "We've put so much faith in analysis and quantification and other areas of left-brain thinking that we've often missed the forest for all the well-examined trees. Over the past few years, I've been on a sort of personal crusade at Chrysler to legitimize what, for lack of a better term, I refer to as right-brain thinking," end quote. Conrad Hilton was a man not adverse to listening to a voice within himself. In bidding to buy the Stevens House in Chicago, Hilton offered $165,000. When he awoke the next morning, the number $180,000 stuck in his head. Although he was not aware of the procedure which resulted in this number being so predominant in his awareness, he changed his bid to $180,000. As it turned out, the next highest bid was $179,800. The Stevens House became known as the Chicago Hilton. The process of arriving at $180,000 was not an analytical one, but the result was not only a very rational business decision, but also a very, very profitable one. Tom Theobald, the CEO at Citicorp, states, quote, "I depend on my gut, but I don't mean to use gut in an unscientific way. For God's sakes, after 25 years in a certain position, you ought to have absorbed a whole lot of dictionary that gives you the meaning of what's going on," end quote. The pages of Entrepreneur Magazine, the Harvard Business Review, Fortune, Investor's Business Daily, and other similar business publications have extolled the virtues of intuition. From these publications come the conclusion that intuition is reliable, neither irrational nor a random process, a skill of knowing, the ability to discern possibilities and see potential. It's used to sense when a problem exists. It's used to define problems. It's used to check the accuracy of analytical thinking and is complementary with analytical thinking. How about the use of intuition in fields other than business? Some of the world's greatest scientists and artists recognize the value of intuition. Jonas Salk wrote, quote, "Only by cultivating and refining the processes of intuition and reason complementarily can we achieve the wisdom we seek. Let intuition be your guide, with reason at your side." Albert Einstein wrote, quote, "Truth in physical matters can, of course, never be founded on mathematical and logical considerations alone. There is no logical path leading to these laws. They can be reached only by intuition." Einstein is an example of many scientists who know the answer before they can prove it and do their research according to the saying, ready, fire, aim. The poet Carl Shapiro wrote that the poet's, quote, "intuitive knowledge of form," unquote, is what transforms a bunch of words into a poem. The philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer believes that it is in a somnambulistic or intuitive state of mind, and not the composer's analytical mind, which is the source of this acute sensitivity. Intuition and analytical thinking are outputs of the brain. That is, the brain can both intuit and analyze, which means that so can we. Intuition is believed to be a function of the right hemisphere of the neocortex, and perhaps the limbic system as well. By contrast, analytical thinking, logic, or reason is believed to be the function of the neocortex's left hemisphere. So the brain's hemispheres operate from a division of function or division of labor principle. Being a brain function, intuition is available to everyone, everywhere. What is this division of function or division of labor? In both written and spoken communication, the left hemisphere processes the basic text, that is, the sequence of the words, syntax, and grammar. Left to its own devices, the left hemisphere comprehends the literal meaning of a text. For example, the left hemisphere may well translate the statement, "People who live in glass houses shouldn't throw stones," meaning that if you live in a house made of glass, then don't throw stones at it because something may break. The right hemisphere listens for context by weaving together all relevant information. Weaving together means joining together information about ourselves, others, our immediate surroundings, and the world, and being aware of the speaker's tone, gestures, changes in inflection, and the cultural context of the conversation. Only then is the fundamental meaning of the words understood. Understanding others involves being aware of another's real state of mind. It involves grasping their emotions, experiences, and intentions, interpreting nonverbal clues, voice tones, facial expressions, and gestures, and being able to distinguish truth from a lie. These are the provinces of the right hemisphere. On the other hand, left to its own devices, the left hemisphere will make up its own story about another's emotions because it does not grasp nonverbal clues. The left hemisphere may produce a logical explanation about another, but it will often be irrelevant. The right hemisphere is essential for spatial perception because it can see things all at once. The right hemisphere links together the large strokes of life and sees how they fit together. The right hemisphere sees the higher organization of things. On the other hand, the left hemisphere specializes in analyzing individual pieces and reasoning about them. The left hemisphere links the small elements together so there can be action and production, and so the small pieces can be reproduced by a formula. But it is the right hemisphere, the source of experience of relatedness, which is the home of the sixth sense, and having the big picture, or an overall view of the world. Tor Nurtranders, author of The User Illusion, Cutting Consciousness Down to Size, says, quote, "During any given second, we consciously process only 16 of the 11 million bits of information our senses pass on to our brains." In other words, the conscious part of us receives much less information than the unconscious part of us. We should trust our hunches and pursue our intuitions because they are closer to reality than the perceived reality of consciousness." End quote. Let's look now at how intuition relates to creative thinking. Intuition is a part of us which is activated whenever our demand for knowledge exceeds our supply. Intuition exists within this gap or deficit between the demand and supply of knowledge. Intuition fills in or reduces this gap. Intuition is not a physical thing like an apple or a zebra. Intuition is not located in only one particular place. Intuition can appear anywhere and at any time. It can be felt in the gut as a gut feeling or in any other part of the body. Intuition is a gap filler, experienced in as many ways as there are people experiencing it. The existence of knowledge or know-how may be viewed as a net, such as the larger of the two nets that you see here. The net's individual strands represent single isolated ideas. Where the strands cross each other and the net is intact is where we represent creative thinking. That is the combining of two or more ideas into something more profound, new technology or innovations. This intact net is the product of past creative efforts, such as the automobile, the personal computer, ice cream, or bagels. There are also gaps in the net, things with which we are not familiar. This would include such things as automobiles, which deliver 10,000 miles per gallon of gasoline, free energy, or stress-free parenting. These gaps are shown in the smaller net where the strands do not cross. These gaps indicate the potential for future creativity, new ideas, and new innovations. Creative thinkers are the persons who sense where the net is not intact and who mend it. Creative thinkers are the people who see the possibility for what we now call the personal computer or tasty fat-free ice cream. Creative thinkers see gaps in the net and have a vision of what will mend it. Creative thinkers are gap fillers because they eliminate the gaps in the net of creative life. Creative thinking takes place where nothing currently exists. Creative thinkers are drawn into the gap of our creative life. They are drawn into nothingness. The creative thinker intuits the existence of a gap in the creative net and hence intuits that a new idea or know-how is a possibility not yet realized. The creative thinker also uses his intuition to fully understand how the gap is to be filled. Intuition is itself a gap filler. This is why intuition is valuable. It helps provide you with useful information and guidance which you don't already have. Intuition is that non-analytical part of us which is automatically activated to fill in the gaps in our understanding. Intuition has no life separate from these gaps. Whenever you have a gap between what you want or need to know and what you do know, it is there and then that you can find your intuition. Did you ever have an intuition about something you already knew with certainty? No. Did you ever have a gut feeling that you should stay away from someone after you already knew with certainty that you should? No. You have these gut feelings when you don't have complete information. Ray Kroc didn't have a gut feeling to buy a small hamburger restaurant in Sacramento and call it McDonald's years after he did. He had that gut feeling before he bought it, and that's why he did. So the economist in me sees the supply of intuition as infinite because intuition does not have an existence independent of your quest for greater understanding. Your intuition exists exclusively within your own desire to fill in the gaps of your understanding. Because of this, the supply of intuition is infinite. The economist in me sees that the demand for intuition creates its own supply, because intuition is there when you need or want it. But you need to acknowledge and recognize it. Intuitions already exist somewhere within our grasp. Intuiting information is not creating anything new, but realizing what already exists. Uncovering diamonds is not creating diamonds, it is uncovering them. Peter Senge, author of the Fifth Discipline, said, quote, "We have to stop trying to figure out what to do by looking at what we already have done. And we have to start really looking into our hearts and seeing what we truly believe to be possible." That's literally what it means to have a vision-led change process. The source of energy comes from your deep belief that something is possible. And it might be something that has never, ever been produced on a large scale. So all your historical evidence says no, no, no. But your heart says yes, end quote. A vision-led change will be easier if you understand that each of us can respond to a challenge in one of three ways. We can complain, we can display the characteristics which have worked for us in the past, or we can discover what we are passionate about, what we love about life, what we admire in humans, and give birth to that. The first two, complaining and what has worked in the past, are both based in the past. Complaints are based on something which has occurred in the past. Oftentimes, to simply get things done,